10,000 years. Try to imagine it. For 100 centuries, Norway's highest mountain passes were completely entombed in ice. This wasn't just a layer of frost, it was a geological force, a moving river of ice so thick it literally silenced time, locking away the secrets of those who dared to cross it. Then, the world began to warm. The Great Thaw began. And on one ordinary August afternoon, a reindeer hunter high in the mountains slips on the melting ice. As he catches his balance, he glances down and sees a glint of impossible light. It's the sun, glinting off a Viking sword that last tasted the air of this world nearly 1,000 years ago. A single sword, you might say, could be a fluke, a tragic, isolated story. But this same receding belt of glaciers has surrendered over 4,500 artifacts in the last decade alone. 4,500 pieces of the past emerging from their frozen tombs. Each one is a bombshell, a piece of evidence that demolishes the tidy linear story of the Ice Age we thought was complete. Today, we're not just looking at artifacts, we're looking at evidence that forces experts to shred their own textbooks. We're counting down discoveries so shocking, they're redrawing the maps of the ancient world. Because the past isn't buried deep underground. It's been waiting, perfectly preserved, on ice. Our story begins in 2019 in the Jotunheimen Mountains of Norway, a name that literally translates to the home of the giants. Here, an archaeology team is conducting a survey, a slow, painstaking process of scanning the edges of a melting glacier. The work is cold, repetitive, and often yields very little. Suddenly, a voice rings out, laced with humor. "Hey, anyone lose a flip-flop?" Laughter ripples through the team. It's a common joke, finding modern trash in these remote areas. But as they gather around, the laughter dies in their throats. This is no joke. Pulled carefully from the icy slush is a sandal, but it's unlike anything they've ever seen. It's made of leather, with stitching and cobbler's marks still perfectly, impossibly crisp. The design is almost Roman. They handle it with a reverence usually reserved for gold or jewels, because every instinct tells them this object should not exist here. The sample is sent for analysis, and when the results from the carbon dating lab come back, they are staggering. The atoms within the leather have been counting the years, and they scream a date of AD 300. This is the height of the Roman Iron Age, a time when history books insisted these high-altitude passes were utterly impassable, locked in snow and ice for all but a few fleeting weeks a year. And the sandal tells a story. Forensic analysis of the wear pattern reveals a life of use. The leather is worn smooth at the toe and heel, but not just from walking. It has the unmistakable scuff marks of someone hustling, of someone using their heel to brake while moving quickly downhill. This wasn't a ceremonial object left as an offering. This was a functional piece of footwear used by someone who scaled a 1,900-meter pass in shoes thinner than a deck of cards. The established theory that these mountains were a desolate barrier was proven dead wrong by a single, discarded shoe. It's irrefutable evidence that powerful networks of trade, news, and secrets were flowing through these mountains far earlier and far faster than we ever dared to imagine. Who was this person so confident in their journey they wore such flimsy protection? What message, what trade good was worth that risk? Let's jump forward 7 centuries. The same vast, interconnected glacier system that gave up the Roman-era sandal offers up something else, something far more menacing. It's a 94-centimeter iron sword, its blade long and sharp. But the true miracle is that it's still wrapped in its original scabbard, made of wood, leather, and braided wool. When it emerges from the ice, it's as if its owner had just set it down a moment ago. In the lab, the story gets even richer. Analysis reveals the wool of the scabbard was once dyed a shocking, vibrant red, the color of blood and fire, a statement of wealth and power. And the blade itself? It's a masterpiece. It isn't just a sharpened piece of iron, it is pattern welded. This was the absolute pinnacle of Viking technology, a complex and mystical process where rods of iron were twisted and hammered together, creating a blade that was both incredibly strong and flexible, with a beautiful watery pattern on its surface. This was not the tool of a simple farmer. This was the weapon of a chieftain, a wealthy merchant, or a seasoned warrior. The only problem? The location. It was found 5 kilometers from any known trail, at an altitude where freezing temperatures and life-threatening storms are a serious threat even in the middle of July. So, what was it doing there? Isotope analysis of the wool fibers provides a clue, tracing their origin not to Norway, but to Denmark, over 1,000 kilometers away. The best theory paints a tragic picture. A wealthy, important traveler journeying far from home was caught in a sudden blinding whiteout. Disoriented and lost, he likely burrowed into the snow for shelter, hoping to wait out the storm. But the storm never passed. One fatal miscalculation, one blinding blizzard, and an entire saga, the story of this man, his journey, his purpose, was flash frozen, locked away until the ice finally decided its story could be told. Legendary weapons and Roman-era artifacts completely rewrite textbooks. But sometimes, it's the smallest, most humble objects that rewrite our understanding of daily life. In 2022, a volunteer working with the archaeology team uncovers a handful of small carved spruce pegs. Each one is no bigger than a pencil, but they are masterfully shaped, each with a tiny, carefully carved notch and barb. What on earth could they be? Dated to the 11th century, they were a complete mystery to the archaeologists. But when shown to local Sami elders, they were recognized instantly, with a smile of recognition. These, they explained, are koiso. They are ingenious little collars or muzzles designed for a very specific purpose, to stop young goats and lambs from nursing from their mothers while still letting them follow the herd up to the high summer pastures. The implications of this tiny domestic discovery are absolutely staggering. It proves that people weren't just taking brief, risky summer trips into the highlands to hunt or trade. They were staying. They were bringing their entire herds, staying long enough to manage their livestock, to wean the next generation. They were building communities, setting up summer camps, and turning these frozen, formidable peaks into a seasonal home. This wasn't just a route, it was a destination. The Ice Age mountains weren't some terrifying wilderness to be survived. For months at a time, they were somebody's year-round address. These pegs transform our view from a landscape of lone travelers to one of families and communities. Now, let's flip the globe and travel to a time far deeper in the past. We're 45 kilometers off Australia's northwest coast. Here, marine archaeologists are exploring an ancient riverbed, now submerged under 14 meters of deep blue ocean. The landscape is alien, a world of silt and sea fans. But as the divers sweep the seabed, their lights pick out shapes that don't belong. They find hundreds of stone tools, scattered and undisturbed, and among them, something breathtaking: grinding stones. These are not just any rocks. Lab analysis of their surfaces reveals microscopic residues, a starchy coating left over from their last use. The starches are from millet and panicum, native grasses. This was an 8,500-year-old kitchen. This is where indigenous bakers were grinding seeds into flour and making flatbread. The discovery is revolutionary, pushing back Australia's known seed grinding technology by a stunning 2,000 years. It paints a picture of a complex society with a stable food source living on a coastal plain that no longer exists. But there's a tragic postscript to the story. Nearby, the divers locate the charcoal from a single hearth, the remains of a cooking fire. When they carbon date it, the results are chillingly precise. The fire was extinguished at the exact same time that geological records show the sea level surged in a catastrophic meltwater event at the end of the Ice Age. This village wasn't slowly abandoned as the waters crept up. The ocean itself, swollen by melting glaciers thousands of kilometers away, simply rolled in and swallowed it whole. perhaps in a single season, before anyone even had time to pack their tools. Think about that for a second. An entire landscape, an entire way of life erased by the melting ice. And now, that same melting is revealing what was lost. The ice is just getting started, and the oceans hold even more. If you want to be on the front lines of discovery as more of these lost worlds reappear, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because the next priceless piece of history could be unwrapped by a glacier at any moment. From an underwater kitchen, we now travel to an underwater industrial complex. Off Mexico's Caribbean coast, divers have been exploring a labyrinth of flooded caves. These cenotes were once dry, a vital source of fresh water for the peninsula's earliest inhabitants. But squeezing through a narrow, previously unknown fissure, a team of cave divers emerged into a chamber that defied belief. They had discovered a secret 8,000 years older than the pyramids of Giza, a prehistoric ochre mine. The vast chambers were not natural. They were scarred with ancient pick marks. The floor was littered with mining tools and lined with carefully placed stone cairns, markers to help the miners find their way back out of the pitch-black maze. The ceiling itself, even after millennia underwater, still drips with the raw blood-red pigment, ochre. Carbon dating of charcoal from their primitive hearths confirms this mine was active between 12,000 and 10,000 years ago, a time when the caves were still dry and the world was just emerging from the grip of the last true ice age. Imagine the scene. Paleo-Indian miners crawling hundreds of meters into the suffocating darkness of the earth. Their only light came from flickering torches or crude grease lamps, their lungs filling with dust as they hammered away at the rock, hauling out this precious red pigment chunk by chunk. This wasn't a small local operation. This was raw, industrial-scale extraction. And why? That same distinctive red ochre has been found at archaeological sites hundreds of kilometers inland, irrefutable proof of a sophisticated trade network that crisscrossed the continent, a supply chain for a precious commodity long before the first seeds of corn were ever planted. Let's return to Norway, to a much later but no less challenging time. Here, in the same mountain passes, archaeologists unearth a small, unassuming pine box. It's no bigger than your palm, beautifully crafted and perfectly sealed with a black sticky birch tar pitch. It's a time capsule. When they carefully open it, they find a coil of wick nestled beside a hard, waxy nub of beeswax. This was no mere trinket. Tree ring analysis of the pine dates the box to the year 1520, placing it directly in the heart of the Little Ice Age, a period of bitter cold that gripped Europe for centuries. This was a pocket survival kit. It was a tinderbox, a way for farmers and travelers to carry a live ember or a lit flame between their summer mountain huts and their winter farms in the valleys below. In a world without matches, keeping a fire alive was a matter of life and death, and this tiny box allowed them to transport that precious flame for weeks on end. But here's the twist that rewrites the map. Isotope tests were run on the beeswax to determine where the bees that made it had gathered their pollen. The answer was astonishing. The bees lived in southwestern Sweden, a full 700 kilometers away. These mountain dwellers, who we pictured as isolated, self-sufficient hermits, were anything but. They were plugged into a vast Baltic trade network. They were likely trading valuable mountain resources, reindeer antlers, durable hides, and salt cod, for something as vital and seemingly simple as wax for light. A tiny candy bar-sized box, a personal fire starter, just redrew the entire economic map of medieval Northern Europe, putting it all together. Individually, each of these artifacts is a stunning miracle of preservation, a ghost from a forgotten time. But when you look at them together, they do more than just add detail to our history. They obliterate our entire understanding of the ancient world. The story we were told of the Ice Age was one of a bleak, empty wasteland populated by small, shivering bands of isolated nomads, struggling for survival against an unforgiving climate. These discoveries paint a completely different picture. That world was not empty. It was a connected world, thrumming with activity. It was a world forged by mountain superhighways, used by Roman-era travelers in simple sandals. It was a world of warriors and chieftains carrying weapons of incredible artistry across entire countries. It was a world sustained by deep-sea bakeries and communities that could transform frozen peaks into summer homes. It was a world linked by continent-spanning pigment pipelines, driven by the demand for color and art 10,000 years ago. The people of the past were not just surviving, they were thriving. They were exploring, trading, building, and creating complex societies in environments we once deemed uninhabitable. And the ice is the ultimate archivist, but it's still melting. With every passing season, new passes unseal and ancient shorelines are revealed. Every single meter of ice that disappears is a new chapter of the history book being opened, a new time capsule dropped at the exact moment a life, a tool, or a story was lost. History isn't locked away in dusty books or behind museum glass. It's a living, breathing thing. Right now, it is dripping from glaciers and washing up on our shores. The artifacts we've discussed today are just the beginning. They are the first messages from a lost world that is rapidly re-emerging. The next lost Viking sword, the next 10,000-year-old kitchen, the next clue that rewrites our past could show up on your social media feed tomorrow. So I have to ask you, if you were to bet on one melting patch of Earth for the next jaw-dropping find, the Alps, the Andes, Greenland, Antarctica, where would you place your money? What secret do you think is waiting to be found there? Let me know in the comments below. Smash that like button if you love watching the past get rewritten, and subscribe so we can be there together the moment the next secret finally steps back into the light.